Animorphs fans, and welcome back to the Animorphs universe. Today we're doing another AniLysis, and it is on Skunk Morph. So where did we first come across the Skunk Morph? Firstly, thank you Adobe Firefly for producing an image of a skunk mother and her 4 kits. They are first introduced in this book. Book 9, The Secret. So the context for the Skunk Morph. There is a big dapsome lumber thing, a yerk base in the middle of the woods, the forest or whatever, and they're cutting down trees because they're searching for axe, or they act like bandits. And Walter, Cassie's father, gets a call to hear, and he hears about an injured skunk. So they go out onto the highway, pick up this injured skunk, and bring it back to Cassie's barn, where it's got a big Dracon being sliced down the side of it. And Cassie is very upset because her father, Walter, basically tells her that this skunk is a mother and must have kits out there somewhere in the wild. So this is where Cassie decides to acquire the Skunk Morph. Do you know what it's like to think that you're going to die and never even get back to human form? To believe that you're going to die as an ant, trapped in a hell that no human has ever been to? And now I also saw those little skunk kits, starving, crying out, and with each cry, signalling to some predator. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" I realised my dad was staring at me. I'd been breathing hard, almost crying. There were beads of sweat on my forehead. "Yeah, fine, I said quietly. He finished his rounds and left. I stayed behind. I went back to the skunk in her cage. I opened the cage door and put my hand in. I was not wearing a glove. See, you can't acquire DNA if you're wearing gloves. So this is where Cassie acquires the Skunk Morph. The reasoning for it is that she knows that because of this yerk activity with daps and lumber, that this skunk mother got shot by a Dracon beam. She's not dead, she's just injured. But now Cassie is concerned for these 5 skunk kits that are out there in the wild. It turns out there's only 4, CJ, Marky, and the rest of the Ramones, because Tobias ate and killed one of them. But we've already done the AniLysis on the skunk kits. Go watch that. I will link to it at the end of this video with a video pop-up that happens 15 seconds before the end of the video. Go watch the skunk kits videos for more on that. But we're just talking about the morph now. She acquired it because her idea is that she empathises heavily with these skunk kits, and she wants to make sure that while Skunk Mother is out of action, that skunk kits still have a chance. That the yerk's evil is undone, because remember that the yerks, they don't belong on this planet, so the fact that the skunk mother was shot by a Dracon beam, that's not like a natural way to go. So it's almost like the skunk kits have had their mother unnaturally taken away. So Cassie, with that empathy, decides, okay, I'm going to be the skunk mother while mother is away. And that is what happened there. But she doesn't really tell the Animorphs. It's sort of a secret-ish mission, although Tobias is sort of in the know. So this now is where she makes that first trip with her newly acquired DNA to find the skunk kit. I used my Osprey morph and flew behind Tobias as he led me directly to the spot I had seen the night before. I carried the frozen grasshopper in my talons. I didn't ask Tobias any questions, and he didn't say anything. He pointed out the almost invisible entrance to the skunk's lair. The night before, she had heard skunk kits while they were looking at daps and lumber, so Tobias leads her to the place where he's seen these skunk kits and, unfortunately, taking one of them as an evening meal, like his McDonald's or whatever. A muck skunk. And so Cassie is now there with this grasshopper, and what she does is she basically stays the night with the skunk kits, and it leads her into a bit of trouble. Let's have a look at the quotes to see what happened here. This also is the first time she morphs the skunk, so we do get a bit of the description about what it's like to morph the skunk, and its senses and how it behaves, its attitude. So let's look at those quotes now. It wasn't a difficult morph. I kept eyes and ears and a mouth all the way through the change, not like becoming a bug. There was the now familiar sensation of shrinking, and there was the surprise of having a huge, bushy tail growing from the base of my spine. But I had morphed a squirrel before. This was pretty close. But the fur was a new experience. Oh, I'd grown fur before, but never any so long and luxurious and dramatic. This was a regular fur coat, so to speak. Mostly black, but with an impressive swipe of white down my back and into my tail. The senses of the skunk were nothing dramatic. The hearing was a little better than human, maybe. The sense of smell was good. The sight not as good as my own human vision. And the skunk's body is not swift or strong. I shuffled and sort of waddled when I tried to walk. When I tried to run, I just ended up waddling a little more. My front paws could grasp and hold things, but they were far inferior to my own human hands. It was the skunk's mind and instincts that seemed strangest of all. I've been inside minds that were all fear or all hunger, minds that were keyed up like they lived on adrenaline. But this mind, this package of instincts, was so gentle, so unafraid. Not cocky and swaggering like a big cat, just unafraid. I was an animal no bigger than a house cat, no sharp teeth or talons, and yet just about nothing in the forest messed with me. I felt the gentleness of absolute confidence. I could hear the mewing sounds of the skunk kits within the burrow. I waddled over to the opening and pushed my head inside. It was dark, but I could make out 4 of them. Tiny, helpless little things. No longer infants, but not yet able to defend themselves or hunt like skunks. I know some people think animals don't have emotions, but those kits were happy to see me, and something in the mind of the skunk was relieved and joyful to see them. I retrieved the frozen grasshopper, now completely thawed. I crawled inside that little hole in the dirt. I curled around and the kits nuzzled up against me. I fed them the grasshopper. I knew I only had 2 hours in morph, but even though I'd just gotten up a few hours earlier, I suddenly felt sleepy. The meal was done, the kits wouldn't starve, and I was sleepy and very, very peaceful. Whoomp! Hey, Cassie, are you in there? Cassie? I woke up. Where was I? It was dark. Was I in my bedroom? Was I... Oh, no. Was I in the termite colony? The 4 kits still slept, curled up against me. I was in the skunk's den. What? I said. It's me, Jake, Cassie. Get out of there. Now. You've been in morph for almost 2 hours. That woke me up all the way. I shot out of the burrow and instantly began to demorph. Cassie gets in a lot of trouble here with Jakey boy. And this is actually a really good moment, I think. I think this is where we first start to see Cassie develop as a character. She's not great at being disciplined for a wartime scenario, but she's certainly the empathy of the group, the soul of the Animorphs group. And as much as the other Animorphs and a lot of the fans don't like her for that, I really appreciate that side of her character, even though a lot of the stuff she does is very unwise. But this is all for a different video later down the line. Cassie AniLysis is going to be fun. I know you... Oh, you've already done it. No, I'm going to do a proper, fully detailed one in the future. And that's going to be fun. But she takes care of these 4 kits for them, well, for a couple hours, feeds them the grasshopper. But thankfully, Tobias's snitching, though usually annoying, actually came in handy this time, because Jake comes and basically says, right, Cassie, stop this nonsense right now, or, you know, whatever. And Cassie comes out and demorphs, and she feels all guilty about it. But then, with the other Animorphs there, she manages to convince them to, you know, while Skunk Morph is not here, let's take care of these kits, because, you know, we don't want to lose our souls, or, you know, we still are good people and we want to do right by these skunk kits. And so they do. Over the next 2 days we protected and nurtured a foursome of baby skunks. And as impossible as it seems, it worked. More or less. Maybe I'm kidding myself, but I think the others started enjoying it too. Typically it was Marco who decided, after his first shift guarding the skunks, that the kits needed names. At first I was the only one to morph the skunk mother. Then Axe did it, then the others, one by one. I almost felt jealous. So all the Animorphs, with the obvious exception of Tobias because he hasn't got his morphing power back yet, acquire the mother skunk. So Jake, Cassie, Marco, Rachel and Axe now all have the exact same skunk morph, the skunk mother, who we shall call Susan. Susan the skunk. Her DNA now swims in 5 out of 6 of the Animorphs. And they use this morph in turn to take care of these skunk kits. which is all very lovely. Again, go watch the Skunk Kits AniLysis for more information on that. But Cassie then uses the skunk's ultimate weapon once encountering Jake's dog Homer when out taking the skunk kits for a walk. So let's look over that bit, shall we? I waddled slowly away, took about 10 steps, then turned back to look over my shoulder. The 4 of them were all lined up behind me. I was their mother, as far as they knew, and they were programmed to follow their mother. And then I realised something. We weren't supposed to just be going for a stroll. The kids were hungry. I was their mother, and it was my job to provide for them. I stopped walking and looked back at my kits. 4 almost identical little balls of black and white fuzz. 4 curious little faces watching me, waiting to see what I was doing, eager to learn. I'd been feeding them thawed frozen grasshoppers and thawed mice I'd brought from the clinic, just as I'd been giving Tobias food since he was too busy to hunt properly. But these skunk kits couldn't be fed by humans all their lives. Suddenly, a crashing sound. Something rushing through the woods, careless, wild, noisy, and coming right toward us. I started to lead the kits back to the burrow, but the noise was getting closer. It was coming too quick. I tried to smell what it was, but the breeze was blowing the wrong way. Then, roll, 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 roll. A dog. Without even thinking, I turned my back to the dog. I raised my tail in warning. The dog kept coming. The kits were still lined up. They were watching me intently. It almost made me want to laugh, if I could have. It was a big moment for them. They were about to learn why no sensible animal picked on adult skunks. I had no experience in spraying, but the skunk mind within my own knew exactly what it had to do. I aimed. I looked over my shoulder to judge the distance. I targeted that dog's face, and I fired. Just at that instant when I fired, I had the strange sensation that I knew this dog from somewhere. But it was too late by then. Way too late. At a distance of 10 feet, the spray hit with the accuracy of a laser-guided smart missile. Homer will be okay if you bathe them in tomato juice and leave them outside for a few days, I said to Jake. Sorry. Poor old Homer gets sprayed by skunk, and then Cassie says that he needs to be soaked in tomato juice and left outside for a few days. Now, for a dog, that's probably hell on earth, isn't it? Then again, if they're living in California, that I'm thinking of as a Brit, you know, if I leave the dog outside for a few days, it's just going to be pouring rain all the time, and they're not going to be happy. But no, I suppose it's California, you know, I don't know what time of year it is, but it can't be... Is it ever winter in California? Because I don't... Is there ever a point in the Animorphs series where they're saying, oh, it's a bit cold out? I don't think there is. I think it's just constantly summer in the Animorphs series. Tell me if I'm wrong. But anyway, Homer gets sprayed by Cassie, who for the first time uses the skunk's ultimate weapon. So, learning this morph, the skunk morph, has taken quite a gradual process. It's been a gradual process of becoming the skunk, learning its attitude of it's sort of a bit sassy, but, you know, it doesn't show it off. It's just very quietly confident. This creature, senses are alright, and it just sort of waddles about the place. And it's confident because of its ability to do the skunk spray thing, like Pepe Le Pew. And then, of course, later in this book, she gets to use the skunk morph in a yerk-centered bit of the story. So as much as the skunk isn't exactly vicious, it does prove itself to be useful in the fight against the yerks. And this is what happens. They're attacking the Dapsum lumber place, and Cassie is in her osprey morph. And she's flying around trying to attack these controllers, but they're all coming out of this facility, shooting up at them, and it's not looking good. The front door of the building flew open, and they began spilling out. A half-dozen human controllers, each armed, and worse, far worse, 4 big Hork-Bajir. But it was too late to back off. I was already diving. Blam, blam, blam. I heard the first 2 bullets go whizzing past me. I felt the 3rd bullet hit my wing. It went straight through my right wing, and I tumbled from the air, suddenly as ungainly as a chicken. I fell. Helpless, I fell. Whoomph! I slammed hard into the ground. Cassie is taken prisoner, along with this guy called Farrand, who is this inspector, and the whole Datsum lumber operation rests on him giving it his approval. And so, of course, the Yeerks decide to put him in a box. We're not going to go into that. That's a different story. We'll talk about the Skunk Morph. So what's the Skunk Morph got to do with this bit? So as an osprey, Cassie is captured. She and Farrand are then chucked into this box inside the Dapson Lumber facility. It was cramped in the box, with 2 humans in there. I was hunched over Farrand when his eyes fluttered open. I was already beginning my next morph. What the man saw was the face of a girl, but a face that was sprouting luxuriant black and white fur. So this box is just about big enough for these 2 humans to be sort of cramped in there, and this is where Cassie decides, okay, I've got an actual person next to me, and I've got Yeerks all around out there. What am I going to do? She can't change into wolf, realistically, because she's too big. It's too big. But she can turn into the skunk and use her newfound ability that she tested on Jake's dog earlier to get herself out of the situation. And let's run through that scene now. Visser, I said, I'll kill the human. That was Visser 3's weakness. He needed Farrand alive. That was the pressure point. By threatening to kill Farrand, I threatened the Visser's plan. See, you can't make a controller out of a corpse. The Visser instantly understood. Everyone in this room, weapons on the box. Be prepared on my command to shoot the Andalite without hitting the human. It may be any sort of wild, deadly animal morph. Do not let it escape. I got into position. The human me was scared, but the skunk me was perfectly calm. The skunk knew it had the ultimate weapon. That's the best you can do, Andalite scum, he laughed. Such a terrifying beast you've morphed. He laughed again. He laughed at the chubby, cat-sized black and white animal in the box. Laughed at the way I stood with my back to him, tail raised, looking over my shoulder. A skunk can fire its scent with amazing accuracy up to about 14 feet. The Visser was only 6 feet away. Kill it, Visser 3 ordered coldly. But I fired first. A skunk can fire its scent in 5 to 7 shots. I fired once and hit the Visser in the face. I fired again and hit the nearest Hork-Bajir on the left. Again and hit 2 human controllers. Again and again, all within about 3 seconds. The Visser staggered back, blinded and reeling from the mighty stench. The human controllers covered their mouths with their hands. Some even dropped their weapons. The Hork-Bajir I was worried about. I didn't know if Hork-Bajir even had a sense of smell. Turns out they do. Turns out they have an excellent sense of smell. Too bad. The Hork-Bajir were the first to panic. One fired his Dracon beam wildly. Then the Hork-Bajir lost it completely. They turned and ran for the door. Personally, I didn't see what they were so excited about. Didn't smell bad to me. They ran. The human controllers, the Hork-Bajir and Visser 3. They ran from the horror of my skunk smell. It is a pretty weak ending to the book. It's not great, is it? That the Yeerks get defeated by skunk smell. But it's an entertaining scene, isn't it? It is entertaining, just a bit, probably a bit unrealistic. Anyway, the Yeerks all leave the Dapson Lumber building because of Cassie's smell. And this is the bargaining chip that the Animorphs use to get Farrand to be let go by the Yeerks. Because they reach some sort of a stalemate outside, that there's no guaranteed winner in this battle, so this is what's suggested. The smell would go away in about 7 Earth days, if you were in the open air, Axe said calmly. In a spacecraft, airtight, closed up, cramped, you'll never lose the smell, ever. However, thanks to Andalite chemical technology, there is a way to remove the stench. Let the human Farrand go free. He's unconscious and hasn't seen what you are. Let him go. We'll give you the secret of neutralizing the stench, and we all walk away. I'll dispose of you myself, the Visser shrieked. Andalite filth! Visser, we both know how impossible it is to remove a smell once it gets into a spacecraft. You would need a full refitting at a major space dock. Your bladeship would be intolerable. Visser 3 just stood there and stared. His stalk eyes drooped a little. Get the human, he muttered to his Hork-Bajir. The Skunk Morph wins the day, and though it is a bit underwhelming, it still is amusing, and it's nice to see that Visser 3 he hates the smell so much that he'd rather just let this mission go than have to deal with skunk smell on his own ship. Which, I mean, it wasn't a great plan anyway, was it? Oh, we're gonna chop down the whole woods to search around like bandits. He probably knows in the back of his mind it's a crap plan, isn't it? It's not great. And am I willing to stink of skunk for the rest of my time just to carry on this stupid plan? Nah, just get rid of it, guys. So that's why it works. It was a pretty crap plan. And so, yeah. Pros and cons. Vista 3 weighed it up. But anyway, to finish off the Book 9 stuff, the skunk mother is healed and eventually returned to her kids. The next day, Jake, Marco, Rachel, Axe and I were able to bring the skunk mother back to her den. She waddled inside, and a few minutes later waddled back out, followed by Joey, Johnny, Marky and CJ. They ignored the 4 humans in the Andalite completely. After all, Mother Skunk was back with her kids, and Mother Skunk wasn't afraid of anything. I just want to, this is a bit of trivia now. Hold on, let's send this away. A little bit of trivia that I didn't actually mention in the Skunk Kits video, but that's where it should have belonged really. But I didn't really figure it out until now. Those Skunk Kits in the American versions are Joey, Johnny, Marky and CJ. What are the names in the British book? Because it's actually different. In the British book, it is Joey, Johnny, Marky and Dee Dee. Just a little bit of trivia. I'm pretty sure Dee Dee was another member of the Ramones at some point, and for whatever reason in the British version they've just changed it from CJ to Dee Dee. I think Dee Dee was pretty sure. But yeah, there's the bit of trivia for you, the difference between the US and UK version of The Secret. Anyway, so that's Book 9 dealt with, and there are a few other times that the Skunk Morph is used throughout the Animorphs series, never to this extent. So this was the main skunk book. This is the one where Skunk Morph was vital to the mission taking place. The next time the Skunk Morph was used was in Book 16, The Warning, for was basically a sight gag. We had morphed. Rachel was now a monstrously huge grizzly bear standing up on her hind legs. I'd gone into my tiger morph. We'd deliberately chosen big, frightening animals no one was likely to try and mess with. We wanted people to watch us, but not try and grab us. Tobias had become himself once more, a red-tailed hawk, and Cassie had become the most frightening animal of us all, a skunk. We trotted calmly out into the hall and crossed to the glass observation window that looked down on the command centre. We looked down at the WAA employees at their computer consoles. 50 or 60 sets of eyes swiveled at once to stare up at us, and what they saw kept them watching. Rachel, huge, terrifying, powerful Rachel, was calmly mopping the floor, swinging the mop back and forth like a professional. I was helping. I had the mop bucket in my teeth. Tobias fluttered around us in a circle, shrieking madly. They've travelled to Web Access America headquarters because they want to get information about certain users. Remember the whole Yerk website thing where there was a chat room and all these people were talking about, the Yerks and whatever have you. So Marco and Axe have been sent down into the computer area to try to hack into one of the computers. But so that nobody notices them doing it, the other Animorphs decide to cause a distraction, so they go into this upper observation area, and Rachel is grizzly, and Jake is tiger, and Tobias is floating around overhead, and that causes them distraction. So why has Cassie morphed skunk? Well, we do find out. 2 men in grey uniforms came racing around the corner into view. They had guns drawn. They didn't even notice Cassie. They just stared in horror and confusion at the lunatic scene of a hawk, a bear and a tiger, all seemingly involved in mopping a carpeted floor. "Okay, Cassie," I said. "I hate to do it, but take him out before he decides to shoot." Cassie turned her back to the guard. She raised her black and white tail. She turned her cute little face to look back over her shoulder. Then she dropped the tip of her tail. If you ever see a skunk go through that sequence, leave. Leave, go far away, don't look back. The guard didn't know that. "Fire," I told Cassie. She fired. The guard, who had stood up to the grizzly bear and a tiger, either of which could have turned him into a raw hamburger, had had enough. No one, but no one, can be brave when he's been hosed by a skunk. Ah! He dropped the gun and ran. So that was Cassie's purpose in that scene. She was basically the contingency plan, which was actually great thinking by Jake. So he's caused this distraction, but he also thinks, what if the guards were to come? Well, we need a non-violent way to deal with that situation. So he actually has Cassie just standing to the side as a skunk. It's this contingency. And she fires at the guard, he runs away, and they're able to get away without being shot. I thought it was a great moment. And book 16 is a great book. So yeah, that was a good use of the Skunk Morph. Very well placed Skunk Morph, actually. So when's the next time we get a Skunk Morph? It's actually in Cassie's next book. No, Cassie's next book, which is The Suspicion. And it's a very temporary Skunk Morph. In fact, rather than me explaining it to you, I'm going to let the quotes do it. I'll just give you the context of they've been shrunk by the Helmicrons, and they're trying to get onto or disrupt the Helmicron ship. It was such a weird plot, wasn't it? But here's basically what happens. Marco, I have to morph. I have to be able to thought speak, and you and I have to get even smaller. I focused as well as I could and began to morph the skunk. It was plenty small without being subcellular, like a fly. As soon as I was able, I cried out frantically to Tobias. Tobias, you have to come and get me and Marco. Marco followed my example, morphing rapidly to mole. Tobias came swooping down to us, himself a 1/16 of an inch long, but now quite large compared to us. He took us up, one in each big talon, and flew away. We clung to Tobias's legs, crawling up into his lower feathers so he'd have the use of his talons, and then we flew. He landed on top of the seemingly huge Helmicron ship. The surface was encrusted with tubes, equipment, sensor arrays, and various other details, so his talons found a hold. Then the ship was off again, zipping wildly through a forest of reaching hands. Okay, now what? Tobias asked me. Now we morph. You morph to human. Your human morph should be in proportion to your natural hawk size. You should be at least 1/4 inch tall. That's a lot of extra weight for the ship to carry on top of carrying the blue box. It may slow them down, Marco said, but will it stop them? And even if it does, the Oaks will be able to grab the blue box. I don't think it will stop them, I admitted, but my morph will. Let's see how well they fly with a humpback whale sitting on top of them. This is a very niche and temporary use of the Skunk Morph. It's so that Tobias, who is the same size of a human relatively, even though they're all shrunk, it's so that Cassie and Marco can shrink down small enough so they can crawl onto Tobias without him being hindered too much, so that they could be landed on top of the Helmicron ship, at which point they demorph. So it's basically, it could have been, Cassie could have morphed squirrel. Marco decides to morph mole, even though Cassie had already started morphing skunk, considering that Marco already had the skunk morph. So basically, the skunk morph here could have been replaced by anything, because they all also had the mole morph, Cassie had the squirrel morph. It's just arbitrary that the skunk morph was used in this situation. There was nothing specifically needed about the skunk morph for it, so it's a very minor usage. When's it next used? It's used in The Exposed, and it's actually Axe who morphs the skunk in The Exposed. The Animorphs are trying to get Lowards out of this warehouse, this drug den sort of place. This abandoned warehouse that's been turned into a homeless drug den sort of thing. And they arrive just as the cops are arriving to raid the place. And some of these cops are controllers. So Rachel is in an elephant morph. She's got hold of Lowards and she comes face to face with one of these cops. And that's when Axe decides to turn up in his skunk morph. I lifted my trunk, hoisting Lowards high over my head. I hoped this non-violent Chi warrior would forgive me for using her as a bludgeon. Suddenly, a tiny, furry, helpless-looking creature about the size of a house cat came waddling in. Harmless-looking, unless you knew what you were looking at. Unless you knew what that black and white striped tail meant. The skunk, Axe, I assumed, darted between my huge feet, turned, aimed its butt at the controller, and fired without warning. The air filled with the thick, clawing stench of fresh, potent skunk. Ah! The cop shrieked, clapping both hands over his eyes and falling back a step. I almost fell with him. Axe hadn't hit me, but even a near miss is awful. Now, Rachel, Axe commanded, scampering out of reach. Woomph! Crunch! Flump! My trunk, weighted with the android, slammed down on the controller, buckling his knees and smashing him through the rotted floor to the cruel space below. Effectively, Axe is a distraction in this scenario set. Rachel's there poised to hit this controller who's got the gun pointed, and if she makes a sudden move, the controller cop is probably going to shoot Rachel, but Axe comes in, does the thing with the skunk spray, he gets it in the eyes, and that's when Rachel is then given the opportunity to murder this man. It's not murder, is it? But it's called hyperbole, or hyperbole, as I used to think it was pronounced like 5-10 years ago. Hyperbole! It's like the Super Bowl, but even better. Not that the Super Bowl's any good, mind you. It's crap. American football is rubbish, isn't it? Oh, I'm sorry, did I hurt your feelings, Americans? Actually, I am, because you're like 95% of my audience, so please do forgive this Brit. This silly little Brit. It is crap, though. It's basically a crap version of rugby. Which, by the way, was invented when people were playing actual football and one guy decided to take the ball in his arms and run. I'm pretty sure that was the story. So American football is actually a derivative of soccer. But you didn't know that, did you? It was a bootleg of a bootleg. Well, I'm going on another American rant, and I just freaking love doing it because you don't even bite, do you? I never get the American watchers saying, "How could you say that about my country?" You just sort of say, "Yeah." And I'm like, take the bait. You know, defend your honour. Say, "Oi, you limeys." No, that's you lammies are so stupid. You know, come on, give us a bit of clap back. Obviously in a fun way, you know. Medi, say something like, "I'm Medi Bollocks, and I disapprove of this limey's interpretation of the great sport of NASCAR." Or something like that, I don't know. Let's carry on with the video. Anyways, so Axe has provided this distraction, and then we get one of the most epic scenes in the Animorphs book series, but one that's never really mentioned. And it's where Rachel, as the elephant, takes Axe with her trunk and uses him as like a skunk rifle. I caught sight of Axe, planted squarely in the middle of the sidewalk, and scooped him up with my trunk as I thundered through the milling crowd. "I believe this animal's defense mechanism will assist us in escaping," Axe said, lifting his tail. "Go for it," I said, surging forward and holding Axe out like a weapon. "Skunk! Oh no! It's spraying! Get out of the way!" The mob parted. I heard them shouting, saw their panicked bodies hurtling aside as I rocketed past. I actually tried to get Adobe Firefly to draw me up an AI-generated image of this happening, but it couldn't get it. It wasn't capable, for whatever reason, of doing an AI-generated elephant running down a sidewalk holding a skunk as it sprays. The AI generator was just like, what is this? What are you trying to do? Why are you trying to generate this? Oh, it was funny. But it was a great moment in the book series, and it's one of those that just never really, grabbed that much attention. I think maybe because the book, I don't know. I thought it was a great book as well, so I don't know why this is missed so much by the Animorphs community. I'm going to turn it into an Animorphs Against Humanity card, one of the white cards, when I eventually get around to doing that. I did start to edit it, and I probably will next time I get a break from work. But anyway, what's the last time that the Skunk Morph is used in the series? Because it gets used periodically during the first half of the book series, and then this next example is the last time it's used, and then it's just dropped. Like the Skunk Morph doesn't even get barely a mention after this next part. But it's in book 35, The Proposal, and it wasn't even a deliberate Skunk Morph. Because as you'll recall, in book 35, it's basically like book 12, where one of the animals is having a morphing issue, and is morphing at random. And this time it's Marco. But instead of, like in book 12, where he's just randomly morphing anything, it's even worse now, because he's randomly morphing two things at once. Book 35 was basically just book 12, but with added drama. He morphs while they're at this banquet. So William Roger Tennant is going to be making a big speech in front of this, I think it's at the Marriott Resort again, I think. Is it? Might be. But he's talking in front of a big crowd of people, and they are trying to make him look like a dick, basically in front of everybody. But things go haywire, and Marco decides to morph something, but it goes a bit wrong. I hustled back to the locker room. After returning the clothes I'd borrowed, I found a dark corner in which to morph. As soon as I'd finished, I came scurrying back out. I was feeling strange, like maybe I was still not done morphing, but that was only jitters. I ran for the wall and started to climb, with my furry black paws. My what? Oh my god! Someone screamed. What is that thing? It's like... It's like a miniature 8-legged skunk! Someone screamed. I bolted underneath one of the refrigerators, my 8 tiny paws scrabbling on the tile floor. 2 sets of gigantic feet rushed toward me. I backed up against the wall, half spider, half skunk. 8 legs, all of them tiny skunk legs, with skunk paws and skunk claws. A third the size of a regular skunk, maybe 4 or 5 inches long. The wolf spider's pencil-like mouth, the skunk's long, white striped tail. And I still wasn't done changing. Eyes were popping in and out of my face. Open, closed, open, closed. Then finally I was looking at the world through a grand total of 10 eyes. The spider's already bizarre combo of compound and simple eyes, plus 2 fully functional skunk eyes. He somehow manages to... I think he was going for the spider morph, the wolf spider morph, but he also throws in some skunk there as well because of this thing he's got going on. He just starts to go a bit wild with his morph, and so the skunk gets involved. So now he's a spider skunk, a skunk spider, and he comes up with his own name for it in a second. So let's get that out of the way now. Let's have a look at what happens with this spider skunk morph and how he gets out of this tricky situation, with a lot of hilarity along the way. The third guy dropped to his knees and shoved the broom at me. It whacked me right in the face, crushing the spider's tiny mouthparts. I bolted to my left. The broom followed. I got him, Mr. Broom said. He's coming out. I ran out from under the refrigerator, right into a pair of waiting feet. One of the feet swept across the floor and kicked me. I sailed against the wall. Being so small and light, the impact didn't hurt much. Wait, I was half skunk, wasn't I? I could try spraying, but could I do it before my pursuers crushed me? I pulled a U-turn and sprinted for the toilet stalls, again with the bathroom. Now we got him. Mr. Broom opened the stall door. I raised my tail. Spray, spray, spray! I commanded the skunk. Nothing happened. Nothing. They surrounded me, cutting off any chance of escape. Mr. Broom raised his bristled weapon. I cowered helplessly.
Kinda feel sorry for it,
the first guy said. What? I've never seen anything so ugly in my life. Have you tried looking in the mirror? I growled. I used private thought speak. Jake and the others wouldn't hear. The 3 of them froze. Who said that? Mr. Broom demanded. I did. Down here, me, the creature you're trying to kill.
No way. I didn't know you were a ventriloquist, Charlie.
I'm not. That's right, he's not a ventriloquist, I said. I'm a talking half skunk, half spider. A skider. Or possibly a spunk. Okay, this is too weird, the first guy said. Not as weird as it's going to get if you don't drop the broom, turn around and walk away. What? You heard me. Do it. Now. Charlie, the broom guy, was not impressed. Or what? He challenged. Or I'm going to turn into a 10-foot monster and pop your heads off like dandelions. Oh yeah, right. Alright, gentlemen, but don't say I didn't warn you. It was risky, stupid even, but what else could I do? I began to demorph and grew fast, from 6 inches long to a foot, to 2 feet, to 4. Ah! Broom screamed. His friends agreed.
Let's get out of here.
They ran out of the locker room. And that's where Marco demorphs, and that is the last time we see the skunk morph, deliberate or not. What a morph. I mean, the first time we get it, it's integral to Cassie's early development as a character. So very crucial, and it provided a sort of humorous, if unrealistic, ending to the main part of that book, the A plot. And then the remaining times we get this morph, it's actually very memeable, apart from the Helmicron one, which was just arbitrary and not really necessary. But what other times do we get the Skunk Morph? It's when we get the scene of the bear and the tiger mopping a carpeted floor. Sorry, that's not how you... Who mops like that? Nobody. And then you get the part where Rachel is carrying axe as a skunk while spraying. And then that last time is where it's a spider skunk. Or a spunk. That's really not the right word, is it? But all three of those moments need to have artist interpretations of it. I'm going to get Ghost of Essam on that, maybe. But that needs to be done, because those are such three great moments. And it all involves the Skunk Morph. No matter how niche and specific it is, it's so niche and specific that when it's used, it's actually quite entertaining. So, yeah, that's the Skunk Morph. And the only one who never gets the Skunk Morph is Tobias, of the Animorphs team, that is. And I just think it's used very well. It's not overused. I wouldn't say it's not underused. Yeah, it's just used about the right amount. It's used, with the one exception of the suspicion, in appropriate ways. And yeah, I think it really earns its place in this series, the Skunk Morph. One of the better morphs of the series. So, well done, Skunk Morph. Very impressive showing in the series. Remember to go watch the Skunk Kits analysis if you want some more skunk action. Otherwise, let's say farewell to the Skunk Morph. Very well placed morph in the series. And let's hope we get some artist interpretations of those moments, because they are incredible moments and it all comes from the skunk. So thank you very much. And now we shall move on to the Spin the Wheel game to find out what's in the next analysis. We're back with the Spin the Wheel game, and I'm now currently listening to the audiobook for book 29, which means that on the Spin the Wheel we have everything from book 1 up to and including book 28. And so without further ado, let's go. We could have anything from the summit meeting to Farron, who we've just discussed today, or Ket Halpak. Who's it going to be? Guide. Well, he's going to be fun. So Guide is the escort, isn't he? So he's just the one that leads the Animorphs around. It's going to be a bit of a bigger analysis, this one, because it's focused on a specific character. But yeah, let's take a look at Guide, shall we? That should be fun. I've got to think of what voice I give him. He's very whiny, isn't he? And I think the narrator for Jake did a great job in the audiobooks. So if you are interested in the audiobooks, I do recommend going to get book 26, because his Guide voice is actually quite amusing. Thank you very much for watching. See you for that next analysis in a week's time. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you somewhere else in the Animorphs universe. Ta-ra!